Prabhupada Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Satta Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Shirabai Charanarvind Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki ISKCON Devotee Founder Acharya Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Sigaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gradhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Sri Vrindavan Mathura Dham Ki Sri Dwarka Dham Ki Sri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Sri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Sri Mayapur Chandradhar Mandir Ki Gangamayi Jamunamayi Ki Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Harinam Sankirtana Ki Samavara Ki Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai Shri Sri Gauranitai Ki Jai Shri Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi Ki Jai Shri Krishna Balaram Ki Jai Shri Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Shri Sri Radha Madana Mohan Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and to Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Mano-vacobhiḥ Stapitam Jena Bhuktale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Bandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakanvitam Sham Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kansana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaevacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Dharam Shaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye Nasta Prayesha Vadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama-shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Shri Surabhyay Namaha.
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 Mukam karoti vachalam pangum rangayate girim yatkripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Yatkripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 1. Chapter number 3. Krishna is the source of all incarnations. And this morning we're doing 37? 37, huh? Okay. Yes. Chapter 3. Canto number 1, chapter 3, verse 3-7. Cāsya kaścin nipuṇena dhātur avaiti jantuḥ kumanīṣaḥ ūtīḥ nāmāni rūpāṇi mano-vacobhiḥ santanvato naṭa-caryām ivājñaḥ cāsya kaścin nipuṇena dhātur avaiti jantuḥ kumanīṣaḥ ūtīḥ nāmāni rūpāṇi mano-vacobhiḥ santanvato naṭa-caryām ivājñaḥ cāsya kaścin nipuṇena dhātur avaiti jantuḥ kumanīṣaḥ ūtīḥ nāmāni rūpāṇi mano-vacobhiḥ santanvato naṭa-caryām ivājñaḥ cāsya kaścin nipuṇena dhātur avaiti jantuḥ kumanīṣaḥ ūtīḥ nāmāni rūpāṇi mano-vacobhiḥ santanvato naṭa-caryām ivājñaḥ
cāsya kaścin nipuṇena dhātur jantuḥ kumanīṣaḥ ūtīḥ nāmāni rūpāṇi mano-vacobhiḥ santanvato naṭa-caryām ivājñaḥ
cāsya kaścin nipuṇena dhātuḥ
न चास्य कश्चिन् निपुणेन धातुः
avaiti jantuḥ kumanīṣaḥ ūtīḥ
avaiti jantuḥ kumanīṣaḥ ūtīḥ
nāmāni rūpāṇi mano-vacobhiḥ
nāmāni rūpāṇi mano-vacobhiḥ
santanvato naṭa-caryām ivājñaḥ
santanvato naṭa-caryām
न चास्य काचिन् निपुणेन dhātur
न चास्य कश्चिन् निपुणेन धातुः
avaiti jantuḥ kumanīṣaḥ ūtīḥ
avaiti jantuḥ kumanīṣaḥ ūtīḥ
nāmāni rūpāṇi mano-vacobhiḥ
nāmāni rūpāṇi mano-vacobhiḥ
santanvato naṭa-caryām
santanvato naṭa-caryām ivājñaḥ न चास्य कश्चिन् निपुणेन धातुः avaiti jantuḥ kumanīṣaḥ ūtīḥ nāmāni rūpāṇi mano-vacobhiḥ santanvato naṭa-caryām ivājñaḥ
not and asya of him kaścit anyone nipuṇena by dexterity dhātuḥ nor can they express such things neither in their speculation nor in their words. Kindly repeat after me. The foolish, with a poor fund of knowledge, cannot know the transcendental nature of the forms, names, and activities of the Lord, who is playing like an actor in a drama. Nor can they express such things, neither in their speculations nor in their words. Purport. No one can properly describe the transcendental nature of the absolute truth. Therefore, it is said that he is beyond the expression of mind and speech. And yet, there are some men with a poor fund of knowledge who desire to understand the absolute truth by imperfect mental speculation and faulty description of his activities. To the layman, his activities, appearance and disappearance, his names, his forms, his paraphernalia, his personalities, and all things in relation with him are mysterious. There are two classes of materialists, namely the fruitive workers and the empiric philosophers. The fruitive workers have practically no information of the absolute truth. And the mental speculators, after being frustrated in fruitive activities, turn their faces towards the absolute truth and try to know him by mental speculation. And for all these men, the absolute truth is a mystery, as the jugglery of the magician is a mystery to children, being deceived by the jugglery of the Supreme Being. The non-devotees who may be very dexterous in fruitive work and mental speculation are always in ignorance. With such limited knowledge, they are unable to penetrate into the mysterious region of transcendence. The mental speculators are a little more progressive than the gross materialists or the fruitive workers, but because they are also within the grip of illusion, they take it for granted that anything which has form, a name, and activities is but a product of material energy. For them, the Supreme Spirit is formless, nameless, and inactive. And because such mental speculators equal access to the real nature of the Supreme Being, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord is always in a transcendental position, even when he is within the material world. But ignorant men consider the Lord one of the great personalities of the world, and thus they are misled by the illusory energy. So this is the description of simultaneously the transcendental position and nature of Krishna and the position of those living entities in the material world who try to understand things, who sometimes also try to understand God or transcendence, things of a higher nature, by their limited, frail, imperfect material senses, especially mind and intelligence. They're described here as foolish, just like in so many places here. Prabhupada quotes, of course, the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, so many statements are there, how those who try to know God with their imperfect senses, ivājñaḥ buddha manuṣyaṃ tanuvasritam, that is one of many verses. Param bhavam ajananto mama bhutam maheshwaram. People just do not actually know or understand the transcendental nature of the Lord. And the world at present is filled, well, I suppose it's always been filled, but even more so in modern day society, which has become, to a large extent, as we know, overly materialistic, and people are simply on the bodily platform trying to experience some kind of satisfaction through their limited senses. Prabhupada points out the two kinds of materialistic persons. We refer to them as karmis and jnanis. Materialistic persons are known as, well, both are materialistic actually, but one is totally on the gross bodily platform, whereas the jnanis, a little bit more elevated, and we see this especially when we associate or talk with people who are in the what is called academia or academic field. Means teachers, professors. They are mostly involved in what Srila Prabhupada would refer as mental gymnastics, actually. Yeah. But they are also ignorant because no one can understand the nature of transcendence. That verse is also there. Atha Sri Krishna namadi na bhavet agrayam indriyai. With the ordinary indriyas or senses, we cannot understand, as it is nicely explained here in the purport, the name, nama, rupa, form, lila, activities, guna, qualities, or even we cannot understand also the different manifestations of the Lord's Shakti, energies. Even we cannot understand how the material energy is properly functioning. To this day, believe it or not, there are two main theories, whether the earth is flat or whether the earth is round. And there are big debates on it, even today. So we cannot understand even material things with our limited senses. We can understand in a limited way, but not fully. And therefore, the importance of taking to the proper process, which is given by our Shastra. Of course, nowadays people also reject Shastra, isn't it? Because their conclusion is that it is man-made, and they find so many faults. And actually in different Shastras, because over the centuries, since we are in Kali Yuga, different people have tampered with Shastra. Even Acharyas, they admit, even like Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and others, they understand that, this is also pointed out by Srila Jiva Goswami, that certain things, certain statements have been adjusted. As a matter of fact, there's a whole allegation. When the British, all glories to the British, when the British came to India and colonized India and ruled India for some 200 years, that was around the time when what they call, as if scientists think they discover, or intellectuals think they discover things. Very often their so-called discovery was known or discovered previously. So around the time when the British came to India and began their activities and colonized, etc., that was around the time when what is called the science of sociology, studying societies, that began in America, and of course it was the British also became involved, and they very very much influenced such kind of research. In other words, intellectual people, people who work more on the level of their brain or their intellect, they like to analyze things. It's a subtle form of sense gratification, actually. Just like we sometimes like to eat different kinds of food, or we like to hear different kinds of music. It's like gross sense gratification, things that are pleasing to the eyes. People go to movies, etc. There's also what is called intellectual sense gratification. And I know when I was in Indonesia especially, I was in a place where that's in Yogyakarta. Yogyakarta in Indonesia is the intellectual place of the country. It's the student city of Indonesia. So they have like over 100 universities. And every other day there's some big seminar going on at some university. And, people who are professors and teachers, they prepare their papers and they go and they just, and it's like one theory after another, and it's a whole question of who is going to be presenting some new theory that will defeat the previous theory, etc., like that. Of course, this has been ongoing since time immemorial as well, and it's never really actually satisfactory. So our process as devotees is actually different, and in many ways it presents obviously a problem in that it puts our way of thinking, our way of doing, in conflict, in direct conflict. In the last few months, and more recently, last couple of weeks especially, I've been reading up a little bit on what they call, things we don't read about so much as devotees, what they call the Millennium Goals, that so many countries around the world are trying to look at what's happening in different countries and trying to find the solution to the different problems. And they're spending a lot of money doing that, putting a lot of energy, having so many what they call summit meetings, and writing so many papers, very long papers. And they keep adjusting in so many different ways. But because it is being done on, the material platform, they're never, going to resolve the problems at hand. One of the goals here in India, for example, each country has a set of goals according to, this is all organized by what is called the United Nations, Prabhupada spoke about the United Nations a few times by saying that the main thing that's happening is that just simply the flags are going up. The more flags that go up, that means the more disunity. Prabhupada would say, as soon as there's two people in a room, you're going to have two opinions. You have 10, you can have 10 opinions. When we are on the bodily platform, mental platform, this is what happens. And unfortunately, because most people, most leaders around the world are not, as was the system, as is meant to be the system. That's how it is in the Vedic, let's say, culture. That leaders in society take guidance, isn't it, from people who have transcendental knowledge, or in our Vaishnav and Vedic culture, Kshatriyas take guidance from Brahmanas. Of course, nowadays, even to speak about Brahmanas, because when you speak about Brahmanas, naturally one introduces the whole concept of varnashrama, isn't it? Varnashrama dharma. And those who are on the bodily platform, mental platform, they have big problems with varnashrama system, because they are lacking actually some of the basic knowledge and understanding of basics, let's say, in spiritual life. So it makes for a very challenging situation for devotees, and it's directly what Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, that in the material world, basically, there are two kinds of people, the divine and the demoniac, the devotees and the non-devotees. So, in one way, should not be surprising for us that there are these two opposite views. Small example, which in many ways actually is a major point, major theme, especially for those who are connected with, let's say, the Varnashram ministry we have here in India. And I was just reading on this a little bit more recently because it's part of my research. Right from the time of independence here in India, there was a very big, there were many debates about so many things. One of the debates, which is very significant for us as devotees, very significant for ISKCON as a society also, is the debate, and this is what India as a country was faced with, in 1947 when India became independent. On the one side, there were individuals like Gandhi and others who were promoting, the traditional Vedic, simple living and high-thinking philosophy that, Srila Prabhupada speaks about, which essentially was based on village life, agrarian life. That was one school of thought. Then the other school of thought was that, no, we should follow what is happening in the progressive world. We should follow what is happening in the developing countries. We should also become industrialized. We should take to the path of industrialization. So actually these are like two very separate and different ideologies. And although Gandhi was quite influential and preferred actually this whole village, what Prabhupada refers to as, Gandhi also refers, village organization, village life, where one learns to live on the concept and principle of self-sufficiency, etc., like that, without unnecessarily over-endeavoring materially, etc. As soon as Gandhi actually left his body, then at that time the first Prime Minister of India, Nehru, completely, because his training was, as we know, in England, so he promoted, and that has been, we could say, the policy practically to this day. And therefore we have in India plans which is directly coming from this 17 goals identified by the United Nations. One of them being in terms of urbanization, and therefore we have the concept of smart cities. India is supposed to come up with some 100 smart cities. Actually, all over the world, different countries are implementing in different ways like that. And also, digital India. Digital India. Now we're being told that actually don't ask your bank for a bank statement. You get it through the computer, so that we don't have to waste paper, because every time we use paper, we're cutting down the forest. Ecological concerns. So it's a very mixed bag, actually, because it's not based on, in our perspective, on we could say basic concepts and principles which have been established since time immemorial, because Shastra, as most people don't know, most intellectuals believe that Shastra, it was composed just a few hundred years back, or the most, 1,000, 2,000 years back. There's no such thing as, eternal. Shastra is not eternal. I mean, when you don't believe in God, nothing is eternal. If God is not eternal, nothing is eternal. So everything is constantly changing. That's the perspective or understanding or proposition, which is actually speculation. Yes, many things are changing, but the basic nature, isn't it? Basic nature of the human being today, year 2017, is essentially the same 5,000 years ago. Having some basic, needs, basic physical needs, basic psychological needs, basic emotional needs, basic spiritual needs, like that. So basically here the verse is explaining how those who take basically shelter of the external energy. We were talking about that yesterday, I believe. Yesterday or the day before. Yesterday the verse was talking about Amoga Lila, right? The Amoga Lila that took us to Jagannath Puri. But everyone is caught up in the Moga Lila we were mentioning yesterday, which Krishna explains, of course, also in the Bhagavad Gita, that everything will be, and this is happening right and left, every day, in the lives of individuals, in the lives of countries, etc., because everyone is situated on the wrong platform. So everything will actually be frustrated. Moga shamoga karmano, that verse especially. Moga jnana vichisa rakshasim asurim chaiva. This is what happens when we take shelter of the Mohini Prakriti, external energy of the Lord. It's a very hard lesson that humanity has to learn, learning the hard way, unfortunately. And therefore, the process recommended in the Shastra by our acharyas is to take knowledge from the perfect source, from Krishna, so that we can understand the workings of this material world so that we can know how to properly live in this world, and especially that we can know and understand how this world is primarily meant for us to learn the higher, isn't it, the higher purpose and the higher realms of life, which is ultimately the spiritual or transcendental realm, which is the only process that can actually bring us to happiness and satisfaction, or as Krishna explains also in the Bhagavad Gita, Gyatva-mam shantim richyati bhoktaram jagyatapasam. When we know that Krishna is meant to be the enjoyer, Maheshwaram, he is the supreme controller, and Suridam, Sarva-bhutanam, the best friend and well-wisher of all living entities, then and only then there can be actually happiness, peace in the lives of individuals and in the material world. So in many ways we have this big challenge, all of us, in many ways individually we have to present this philosophy of Krishna consciousness, and of course the best way to present the philosophy is by living that philosophy, isn't it? Then there is more of a chance for people to accept when they see good examples of the philosophy actually being lived, and that is done both in terms of our behavior, of our speech, of our activities, etc., and also more challenging, I suppose, in many ways, demonstrates how on the community level, isn't it? That's what Prabhupada was referring to, establishing communities based on these principles of Krishna consciousness. Maybe some questions or comments on this? Prabhu?
This Vyasa Mahadeva is
Yes.
material, lots of material incarnations. And Narada also is a material incarnation. And how could Vyasadeva could not grasp properly, fully, only Narada came, then only instruct him that you have to include Krishna, then only.
So because the question is, because Srila Vyasadeva is an incarnation and also Narada Muni, how is it that Vyasa could not fully grasp and his spiritual master Narada Muni had to instruct him? Yeah. A few things. One is that the subject matter of transcendence is a very deep subject matter. So even for someone who's self-realized, because Krishna, we were talking the other day, even Krishna, always learns, because he's ever expanding, so Krishna's own beauty is attractive even to him, his knowledge is ever expanding, etc. So if that is the case for Krishna, what to speak of the jiva, living entities, who are, even though at that very high exalted level of being liberated, still the subject matter is infinitely vast and ever expanding. That is one aspect. The other one is to demonstrate actually the whole concept of guru-disciple. Although, our entire line of Vaishnavacharyas, Guru Parampara, is filled with personalities who are self-realized. At the same time, there are different levels of realization. Just like we were some time back pointing out how even amongst acharyas there are differences of opinion sometimes on certain subject matters. It is not that Srila Vyasadeva did not speak about Krishna, because the main instruction actually from Narada Muni was that you have not sufficiently described the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And therefore, if you do that, then you will be, completely satisfied, because that was the inner feeling of Srila Vyasadeva. I wrote so many books, I spoke about so many things, but he felt there was something missing, isn't it? So the Bhagavatam explains that at that time Narada Muni came and he could analyze what was that thing missing, not sufficiently. So that's a lesson for us as well, because what Srila Vyasadeva had to do was to put in writing all of the Vedic literatures. And of course, that includes what we call Shruti and Smriti. And within the Smriti section, there are a lot of material sciences, material knowledge. So that should serve as a warning for us also, because when we speak about Varnashram, and Varnashram College, for example, there are many subject matters, like the science of politics or the science of economics, which deal with many material subject matters, and even though they are connected with the Vedic literatures, we may get too involved in that, forgetting the main or the source or the purpose of all of this knowledge. Of course, in modern day society, they speak of material things that is not coming to a large extent from Shastra, and also which is not for the purpose of connecting it with Krishna or Krishna consciousness. So therefore it is very we could say imperfect and not very satisfying. So it's a little bit like the question that sometimes people ask, Arjuna is a pure devotee, what happened? Why he became confused. Pure devotees are not supposed to be confused. Our Acharyas explained that it was arranged by Krishna in that way so that he would speak the Bhagavad Gita for the benefit of all of us, isn't it? And of course for the benefit of Arjuna, who temporarily was a little bewildered, so to speak, by, what was in front of the Pandavas was not a small thing. This all the considerations. That's why even Yudhishthira Maharaj, who is amongst all of the Pandavas, the one most well-versed in the science of dharma, also became, a little bewildered, thinking that he was at fault for having taken part in the battle of Kurukshetra. So these are, some explanations as to why it happened like that.
There was a question, somebody by the name Bhavya Bhagwan too.
Yes.
He asking, Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam Maharaj, how in a devotee community can we avoid mental speculation?
How in a devotee community we can avoid mental speculation? Mental speculation is a material disease, and therefore the more one is purified in consciousness, then one will avoid this particular activity of speculating. We have, as we know, a checking point or check and balance, isn't it? That whatever we may hear or whatever we may speak, it must be in accordance with Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. So therefore we should always be cautious and checking things to make sure that they are in line, approved by and supported by Shastra. So there's a difference between mental speculation and let's say philosophical discussion, trying to understand certain aspects of Krishna consciousness. So our process, of course, is to always, Srila Prabhupada is in many ways a prime example of that, because when he was translating the Srimad Bhagavatm, he was of course sharing his own realizations of what he was reading, but simultaneously he was looking at all the various commentaries of our acharyas, of our Vaishnava acharyas, beginning with Sridhar Swami. So, to the extent that we are nicely applying the process of Krishna consciousness, which means that by applying that process we will be more purified in consciousness. The more one is purified in consciousness, then one will not speculate. So those who are, we were talking a little earlier, and Prabhupada speaks as well in the purport about Gyanis, those who are on the mental platform and who are actually just largely speculating. So because they are completely devoid, most of them, of the basic Krishna conscious philosophy, therefore it's practically 100% speculation that will not lead really anywhere, that will not resolve problems. So as devotees, we are meant to actually exchange, we're meant to discuss, we're meant to philosophize, but in keeping with these three criterias of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, and also understand that the more we have such kind of discussions and exchanges with advanced devotees, then our, we could say, tendency for speculating will be minimized, will be less. Ultimately we should not at all speculate, and we should base our thoughts on what is there in the Shastra. Yeah.
One more.
Yeah.
One more from Vrindavan. Asking, Varnashrama, as far as I understand, is the dharma of body. Why is that Narada Muni, who is incarnation of the Lord and whose body is not like ours, who is a Nitya Mukta, has to follow the Varnashrama? He has taken to sannyasa ashram.
Varnashram is a material system or material arrangement, and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains how Varnashram is Krishna's system for those who are in the material world, including Vaishnavas, including, actually, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he writes that Varnashram is for Vaishnavas in their conditioned state. It's not that as soon as we take a bead bag, we become liberated. Have you noticed? Yeah. So, but even more than that, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur also explains that even those who are liberated personalities like Narada Muni, they will respect and follow the system of Varnashram, generally speaking, although they're not obliged to, but for the purpose of giving example, isn't it? And Srila Prabhupada mentions also that although Lord Chaitanya, because that's one of the main arguments very often that we hear, Lord Chaitanya rejected Varnashram, which is not true. Prabhupada explains, actually, Lord Chaitanya followed Varnashram because he took sannyas. Sannyas is one of the 4, ashramas. And in that famous conversation with Rai Ramananda, he rejected Varnashram as being the ultimate goal. Varnashram actually is a tool. And there is there is Varna, which is material, social division, and then there is asrama, which is spiritual. So we cannot say that Varnashram is completely devoid of the spiritual dimension. It is primarily the tool that Krishna, or the system, or the process. We should add the scientific process. It is a scientific process. And actually there is no other process as scientific, or we could even say there is no other scientific process, no other social scientific system that can best bring us to that spiritual platform, because primarily Varnashram system, which is dealing with the modes of material nature, is arranged in such a way to gradually bring people and communities and the whole world at least to the mode of goodness, striving for the mode of goodness, which will facilitate, isn't it, as explained in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, as long as we are caught up in the lower modes of nature, especially mode of passion and ignorance, then spiritual life is very difficult. Spiritual subject matter is very difficult to understand. So therefore, when we are fortunate by following the process recommended in Varnashram to gradually come to the mode of goodness, then in that state of the mode of goodness, we can nicely begin to practice spiritual life, which is bhakti. And that very well-known, famous verse, Evam prasanamanaso bhagavat bhakti yogata bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. In this way, one, by practicing devotional service, gains more and more, we could say, transcendental understanding and realizations. And even as one gains transcendental realization, as long as we are here in the material world, as long as we are embodied, we respect and work to a large extent within the system of Varnashram. Although bhakti, Vaishnavism, so to speak, is above Varnashram. We don't deny spiritual life is above the material system. But that material system also has, we could say, its divine aspect or nature because it's given by Krishna, because it's created by Krishna. And therefore it is the system, and the only system, which society should actually adopt, so that society can be properly organized and we can ultimately attain the level of transcendence. So even personalities like Narada Muni, as a matter of fact, Narada Muni, he is recognized in the Bhagavatam and other places as well as being the expert personality who can explain about Varnashram and its importance. He's simultaneously expert in bhakti and expert in Varnashram. So therefore a very important personality for us, and therefore we find him throughout the pages of the Bhagavatam. Yeah. Okay, this morning no question from Prabhu. Continue Prabhu, that's okay. Jai Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki.